Good evening. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:40, and I gave Councilperson Mathis 10 minutes, but I'd like to go ahead and get our meeting started for all of you who have been here on time. Today is Wednesday, November 20th. We have a special Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, and I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:40 p.m. At this time, if we can please have a moment of silent meditation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, may I please have roll call?
Roll call. Okay. Roll call. Mayor Cubillos.
Here.
Vice Mayor Nickerson will not be here today. Councilperson Mathis is running late. Councilperson Urbom.
Present.
Councilperson Roman.
Here.
You have a quorum. Also present for the record, Janice Jacoby, Village Clerk, Norman Power, Interim Village Attorney, Christy Alou, Village Manager.
Okay, great. Also added to this agenda before I ask for approval, we need to discuss an ordinance 2019-06 brought forward by Norman Powell. If we can please add that to the agenda for F2. With that said, may I get a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of ordinance number 2019-06 for discussion? For discussion and possible voting.
I have a question. There were two documents that were emailed, so are we just,
Let me go ahead and rescind the original motion to add the agenda item F2 to add agenda item F2, F3, and F4 as follows. F2 will be ordinance number 2019-07. F3 will be ordinance number 2019-08. And F3 will be 2019-06. All three ordinances have been added by the attorney, and it will be discussed, and he will explain each one accordingly. With that said, may I get a motion to approve the agenda with all adding F2, F3, F4, which is 2019 ordinance 06 through 08.
motion to approve?
Motion's been made by Councilperson Roman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Urbam. All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the agenda has been passed with the addition of the discussion of three ordinances 2019-06 through 08.
For the record, Councilperson Mathis has arrived.
There are no minutes to approve, so we're going to go right into the agenda items. For purposes of this special planning and zoning meeting, I'm going to discuss how we're going to go through the meeting in an effort to be as efficient as we can and so that everybody is heard. We have a development agreement before us. I'm going to ask the manager to please bring us, the council and the residents, up to speed as to how we got here today. I will ask the attorney to interject anything that he needs to with this development agreement. I'm going to then ask Juan to come up from the planner perspective, give us the planner perspective on the agreement, and then we're going to ask the developers to come forward with anything that you'd like to add from what you've heard. Thereafter, I want to open it up to the council because it is the first time that we are meeting as a committee to discuss this in a public forum. And this is a time that I'd like to hear the committee ask any questions to either the manager, the attorney, the planner, or the developer. With that said, then I'm going to close the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, and I will open it up to the public for for the public to please ask any questions that you have to the manager, to the attorney, to the planner, to the developer. We have 2 podiums. Let's use 1 podium at all times for Ben Fernandez and the 2 Barrington brothers. And then for us, we can have the residents and on the other side and Juan on the other side. So since you are here, strategically you can use that one, and strategically we can use this one. That way, that's the purpose of 2 podiums, so there's a discussion. When you go to the podium, please always address your name and address for the record, and please speak into the microphone and speak as clearly as possible. With that said, we're going to go right into agenda item F1, which is a Cavista developer agreement. And I'd like our manager to please bring the council and the residents up to speed as to how we got here today and give us some historical information on this.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? You can hear me, okay? Is this okay? Okay. Sounds a little low. Yes, this is a long time coming. This project has been in the works since I've been village manager, and it's been almost 2 years as the permanent village manager.
Give me 1 second. I'm seeing a gesture in the back. You can't hear. I don't seem like the microphones are
Yeah.
working very well this evening like they were
It doesn't
last
seem like
night.
they are, 'cause I didn't even hear myself. Can you?
Can we put the volume up?
No, let's do it.
You know, it has to do something with my voice. I know. I am going to ask the manager and our attorney. You all are pretty soft spoken, so if you could please speak into the microphone and as loud as possible, please.
Testing, testing. Is that better? That's better? Testing, testing, testing. I can't hear it. It was louder last night. You want me to go down to the podium? If that, let's see if that works. Testing, testing. How's that? No, that's even lower. Testing. Okay, that's good. That's good. Very nice. All right. I didn't touch it.
Excuse me, can you check? Whoa. See, I don't even need a microphone. Can you please check these because they're going to be used tonight?
Check that-
These
that
2
one on the
over here.
podium.
See, it wasn't on
Yeah.
before.
So you can hear that.
Ahora sí.
Okay. We're ready to go.
Testing, testing.
All right. You ready?
Testing,
Everybody
test-
can hear? You need something else? You're going to just wing? Okay. All right. Like I said, this was a long time coming, and through many meetings with the owners of the annexed area, we came to be today. And I'm going to kind of give you just a little summary of how we got here. I know that annexed area, we all know, has been sitting for a while, untouched, and just waiting for something special to go in to that spot. These owners came to the mayor, myself, the administration, to talk about what they envisioned and what they wanted to do. We pulled in our planners, Juan and Camila from Placerbia, and went through some of their plans. Their ideas were to put a mixed-use facility, or I shouldn't say facility, a development there, something that would bring a lot more residents to El Portal and businesses as well. They wanted to perhaps put retail and commercial and residential all in that area. And because it is Biscayne Boulevard and our little undeveloped portion of El Portal, we were excited to see some creative ideas and thoughts go into that space. But it has not, we've never established anything prior to now. I mean, this is a new development. We've never had anything this large developed in El Portal, and this was something really important that we felt we had to take it slowly, go step by step, work with our planners, work with the, and make sure we're within the code and the comprehensive plan, and the form-based code, and that's what got us to what we have today. It took a lot of steps and a lot of work for all of us to come to this, this place. Now, as you know, a development this size is going to require green space, and I know that El Portal has very limited green space. In fact, we have some little parks that haven't been well maintained over the years just because of finance and because of our budget. We do have them, but we haven't been able to really fortify them the way they should be. And we don't have any extra space in El Portal. There's not much property for sale, especially not contiguous property for sale that could even be a new park. So that really was a hindrance or an obstacle for this project to conform to our needs in terms of the code where it requires green space. So we looked at public parks and public spaces, ways to improve it, improve what we have, and we made this team effort to come up with this plan, which is to increase the village's public works department and to afford us an opportunity to take care of the parks we already have. And I worked with our CFO painstakingly in trying to identify what that would cost the village, because that's, again, it comes down to that. And that is why these parks have not been maintained in the way they should be, the ones that we have. So, I think the mic went out. So we asked them to consider being that resource so that we can improve the parks that exist. And so that, because we can't have a contiguous park and there was no property for sale. We did have, our attorney actually looked into just getting appraisals of land in the area to see what it would cost. And we reviewed those appraisals with the Barrington brothers, our owners here, and we reviewed it with our planners as well. Again, we don't have the space in one area for the kind of space they will need to supply from our requirements, from our code. So we sought financial advice, legal advice. The financial advice was necessary to see what this kind of development would mean to the village financially, the impact of it, and the impact on each department. As you all know, we don't have a public works department. We don't have a parks department, but we do have a need. And also, we looked at other municipalities for, okay, is that better? We looked, I don't, well, okay, so we looked at other municipalities as well for precedents. So again, this was a painstaking effort that from parks to public works to public safety, we looked at it all, because adding over 200 or 250 new residents is going to impact the village tremendously. Again, we can't do the contiguous property sale within the village to come up with a park, so we had to come up with some alternatives. And we thought improving the parks that exist would be a fantastic way to apply the requirement for the green space that comes with a development like this. But also, it's a new era for the village, and we have another space that is soon coming into development, and we didn't want to get anything wrong, because this is setting the precedence for the village, this agreement that we have before us today. So we reviewed the contract with the applicants, with our planners, with our attorneys. We've sought appraisals from external entities, and we're working with our council, and we've come up with the development that we have before us today. It's a mixed-use building with mostly residential, limited commercial use, but it is adding a tremendous amount of residents, and it will vastly improve our village and take us into the next steps. It's also, like I said, setting the precedence for what will come next when we develop the Little Farm Trailer Park. So this will also impact our police department, our public safety, because we will have more residents. We need to have more officers on the street. We have to have that area in our rotation for patrol. And it goes beyond just taping things off. This is an area that is kind of separated from us, so that also impacts our roads. We have to also consider just all of the items that we will have to, I guess, pay for, and the financial and fiscal impact that this development has on the village. It is a great opportunity for us, but I believe that the Barrington brothers have come up with something that works for us, and we, in turn, will make this a win-win for the residents as well as the property owners. So with that, if there are any questions from the council, I know that everyone has had a piece of this. The attorney, again, has worked painstakingly on this project, as have Placerbia, our planners. So if you have any questions, please do address us.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go ask the attorney to also, from the legal perspective, how we got here today, and then we'll move into Juan.
Okay, well, it's a combination of the legal perspective and working with the consultant. As you know, the code doesn't specifically provide for a development agreement, but it is provided for in the Florida statutes. That's why we have to have 2 readings or 2 hearings of this development agreement. And for that purpose, we're not really using this meeting as one of those required hearings, so that the public will have ample opportunity and full transparency in what is being proposed. So this meeting is really more so of a committee workshop on the development agreement to answer questions. So what we are doing at this meeting is proposing, obviously, an ordinance to approve the development agreement. But in addition to that, because our code does not specifically provide for a mechanism to receive a lump sum payment in lieu of donations of land, we're also going to look to propose an ordinance to amend the code to create a public trust fund, and in that fund, the developer's contribution, if it passes, will go into the fund, and there'll be fiscal annually reporting of the funds and the usage of the funds for open space, streetscape, civic purposes, as a result of the development. Now, in terms of the donation of park space, one of the things that we initially looked at was if we strictly applied the provisions in the code and required the developer to contribute the required square footage, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right here, but I'm sure the consultant will tell us exactly what the numbers are. That amount of square footage is not located in one particular area in the village because of our small footprint. So one of the challenges in looking at valuing the contribution in terms of a monetary sum was how would we value the square footage in the zoned area. The zoned area doesn't contain enough square footage for donation, so we use what's called, the appraisal used, I should say, what's called an across the fence approach. The appraisal came back with a across the fence appraisal of $2.5 million for hypothetical square footage for the donation to the village, which didn't exist. So if the developer had to literally cobble together, piece together parcels throughout the village, obviously that number would come down because of the different zoning classifications throughout the village. So part of what we engaged in after we obtained the appraisal was negotiating with the developer the proposed contribution to the trust fund, which we arrived at the $1.1 million. The appraisal is also available that anyone in the public can take a look at it. It'll give everyone an understanding of how the appraisal went about its valuation and its approach. I think it's pretty sound. It's accepted principles for appraisers. And the approach also with the trust fund is consistent with other cities in Miami-Dade County and throughout the state. And the mechanisms built into the proposed ordinance will also allow for full transparency. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
And after we get through F1, you'll walk us through each ordinance. Juan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Juan Mullerat, Usuria Design. The way that we got to this point from a planning perspective is pretty simple. Most form-based codes have a mechanism for either, you can hear me? Is it on?
Yeah.
Closer to it?
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
Better now?
You might have better.
So it's pretty straightforward. There's built-in mechanisms in most form-based codes that allow for certain developments of a certain intensity to provide either open space in lieu of additional bonuses. And these bonuses are put in place so that there is a benefit to the village at large for either transportation, improvements on open space, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The closest example that we have, obviously, is Miami 21, which has a bonus system, which we call a public benefits fund. And it has that mechanism for fee in lieu. A fee in lieu is the ability to pay for a requirement that otherwise would be done in kind. In this case, the addition of open space. What we found during this process was that it was complicated to find a site large enough to accommodate the amount of open space required through the calculation of half. Let me run you through the math. It's very simple. For every square foot that the developer asks in addition to what they are allowed, they're required to provide off-site half of that square footage. So they were requiring around 65,000 square feet of additional square footage, which would allow for an extra 2 stories. So we were requiring 32, et cetera, 32 point something thousand square feet. What that meant is that we were requiring the developer to provide or to find at least 2 contiguous lots available for sale to increase the park space that the village currently has. And what we found during this process, this exercise, was that, number one, it was very complicated to find 2 contiguous sites for sale that amounted to that space. And 2, where they would not be contiguous, they would be small lots, and we would have an issue, not necessarily an issue, but it would be an additional exercise to make sure that the residents, wherever we found those lots, were comfortable having a rezoning of those properties into open space. So it was a lengthy exercise that we weren't up to the challenge. We were up to the challenge, but we felt that in conversations with the mayor and the village manager, that it might be it might be better to have a mechanism for fee in lieu that would either support the existing space that we have, that can be improved and potentially repaired in some cases. There are some places that need some repair and improved, or to potentially acquire additional land if the council found it appropriate with those funds. So the fact that we don't have that mechanism in the code, and then the attorney will speak to that, we have been looking at an ordinance that would modify, they would amend the existing code to allow for that mechanism to be in place. One last thing that I will say, the reason why this mechanism is not currently in the code, if you recall, the code was a translation of the previous code that did not look into these kinds of mechanisms. And so we are slowly bringing this code into a more useful, more manageable, and more up-to-date code, slowly, step by step. And in this case, this amendment will help add that mechanism that will allow the village a little bit more flexibility in dealing with these kinds of issues, and in this case, open space. I'll be available for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Juan. Ben?
Thank you very much and good evening. For the record, Ben Fernandez, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard, here on behalf of the property owner, BH 495 Northeast 83rd Street LLC, but the Barrington brothers were the principals behind that. And I'd just like to, first of all, thank all of you, particularly you, Mayor Cabillos, for being so available to meet with us. I know it took several meetings to work through this project. And also Juan and Camila have been great and very accessible. We know that this is a difficult project for you, being that it's the first, I guess, major project in the annexed area. We're very excited about it. The Barrington brothers chose a quality architect in Modis Architect to bring this project to fruition. Anna Trinchet is here in case you have any questions about the project. I'm just going to, if you permit, I'm just going to put up a visual of it. I know we're not here to talk about the project, but I think you might want to know what it is.
Can we turn that around for our residents? Yeah, you can put it right up here.
No, that's fine. And so the thing about going last is that there's not much more to say. I agree with everything that the manager said and everything that Norman said. We're here because your code provides that in the 5 zone, the urban zone, which is the only zone that allows this, and I think it appropriately allows it in this area because the annexed area is removed from the single-family area. This is an area that's near, right across from the city of Miami. It's an area that's forecasted to really change and become much more dynamic as the intersection of 79th and Biscayne Boulevard develops, and we're beginning to see that. And this project is sort of tailored towards that environment. It's primarily one-bedroom units, about 50% of them, but then we have also a large amount of 2-bedroom units that'll cater more to families and some 3 bedrooms as well. It's a project that is compliant with the code in almost every way. I think that we're not seeking any intensity variances. We're consistent with your comprehensive plan, and the development agreement, as Juan indicated, is required because we're seeking the benefit height. And I think that's a good thing for the community because I think Mayor Cabillos, you're correct. The parks and Madam Manager, the parks could use the influx of monies and help that a project like this will provide. What we're proposing is a $1.1 million contribution towards the trust fund, and that would come in 3 payments of roughly equal amounts. One to be paid upon approval of the development agreement, the next upon the issuance of the master vertical permit, and the last on the issuance of the temporary certificate of occupancy for the project. So I think the village would get an immediate influx of money that would be very helpful, and we know that money is going to go outside of the annexed area. So this project really doesn't need it because it provides all of the required open space that is necessary on site. We think the uses are appropriate because it is at the sort of terminus of 83rd Court, 83rd Street rather, where the area is a little bit more removed from the Biscayne Boulevard frontages that are probably more appropriate for commercial. But we do have a strong live-work type of unit along the ground floor, and those are kind of flex spaces that can be converted in the future if necessary to something more commercial as the area changes. We're also providing an easement as part of the development agreement, a 3-foot wide easement along 83rd and along 4th Court that will allow for the widening of the sidewalks to create a more urban and pedestrian-friendly environment. And that's not unlike Miami 21, what the city of Miami is doing along Biscayne Boulevard in the equivalent T5 transect that requires wider sidewalks in what they call the first layer of development. So we're very much consistent with that. Your code didn't require the wider sidewalks to my knowledge, but through the dedication of the easement, you'll be able to do that, and we think that's a good thing as well. I'm here to answer any questions that you have. I agree with everything that's been said, and we would encourage you to recommend approval to the full council. The Barrington Brothers are very excited to become part of your community and to get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Manager, Attorney Plaserbia, and Ben Fernandez. As Chair of Planning and Zoning, I've had the opportunity to work with all of you in the last year. This has been a year in the making. So at this time, I really would open it up to the committee. I'd like to hear what the committee has to say in terms of questions, either for the manager, the attorney, Plaserbia, or for the attorney, or for the Barrington Brothers. And then we can take those questions. The appropriate party can answer, and then I would love to open it up for public comments. With that said, open up to the committee. Councilperson Urban.
I think most of my questions are about the development itself, so if that's not what we're, can I ask questions about that, or?
Absolutely. I think this
Okay.
is a time to be comfortable with, once this agreement goes in place, the development in terms of the processes are going to continue in terms of planning. So this is a good time to really,
Okay.
and I think for the record, it's important to know that this is the first time we're talking about it.
Okay.
So I really do think it's
So I'm not-
important to have questions that is all related.
I'm
Okay?
not feeling crazy or,
No,
or behind.
no, you're good.
Okay, all right. General questions, one of my first questions is, so then, are we currently patrolling, in terms of law enforcement, are we currently patrolling this area?
Yes, we patrol the
Okay.
area, but
That-
again, it's
That's all-
undeveloped.
I wanted to confirm, yeah. And then to really basic questions, in terms of commercial use, how many commercial units are we talking about within the property?
They're live-work units
Okay.
at present, the way they're designed.
Okay.
And they're the ground floor, so it's an 8-story project.
Okay, that sounds
And-
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. And then within the residential units, will there be any at all that would be set aside or designated as low income? Okay. And then my question might be to the attorney then, would we have, is there a requirement currently anywhere within?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's see. And then what further maintenance responsibilities is the village going to have once the property is developed and in use?
We would be required to maintain the public space, which is the right-of-way, as we do throughout the village.
Okay. And we're already doing that to some degree. We're not talking.
Yes, but again, it's undeveloped, so there's nothing.
Okay. And then that's all I got for now. I'm sure I'll have another question in a second, but.
Councilperson Mathis?
My question is, how are we going to connect the main village with
I
that
have
section?
an idea for that, but.
I mean, has that been, I looked through the agreement, I really didn't see anything that talked about connecting this portion. Wow.
Thank you. Currently, the only connection, vehicular connection, is through 87th. We foresee that as the trailer park project moves forward, there may be future connections through that large project onto 87th. So there may become, we might see that there's included pedestrian paths and bicycle paths that provide an easier access to the main village. But it would be complicated to create additional crossings, probably impossible, on the FEC.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Not right now.
Councilperson Roman?
I don't have any questions in regards to the agreement. The one question, and I don't know if I missed it somewhere, is are these for sale or rentals? Rental. Okay, so they are rental. How did we come about, and I had a discussion with the manager about this, the 1.1?
I think, I think the manager or the attorney, either one who wants to take it.
I can just say that, I mean, I don't know how we came to it. There were lots of numbers that were bandied about, but I went to Tischler Bice and talked to them about fiscal impact of more officers, public works, green space, fencing, I mean, just all kinds of things that could really impact the village. And we talked numbers, and then I came back and talked to our group about that. So there were lots of numbers that went on, but we had to be realistic in terms of what we would impose on the developer. And this is the agreement we came with. We wanted enough to sustain a little bit more police presence, so perhaps more officers, one or two more police officers, and that comes with its own expenses, meaning of vehicles and uniforms and those things. But also, we have to really address the public works aspect. So the maintenance of the parks is a huge item, and we believe with this funding, this can help us get that started, and because it's given in increments, we can sustain that for a little bit of time until we can get to a point where we are able to sustain it on our own.
I want to add to that, and perhaps Juan and the attorney can chime in. So our code dictates that by the size of this development, there is a square footage of green space that must be given to El Portal. However, given that there is not continuous property of that magnitude, which I think the total square footage, and please don't quote me on this, is 32,000, I believe, right? Okay. So the analysis that, or the survey that the attorney brought forward was for us to do an analysis of what the cost of square footage in El Portal is. Therefore, taking the cost analysis of the square footage times the required, that they are required to technically give El Portal based on the bonuses of the 2 floors. That dollar amount based on that analysis came up to be about maybe 2.4 million. Well, we all know that that's what the one number that they came up with, but it's not the number that any agreement is going to come to. That's where the back and forth came. So it started at 2.5. We presented it to them, and they came back, I think, at 985. And then we came back, and I think it was 1.1 to be most reasonable. But the dollar amount is contingent upon that survey that was done. The attorney brought forward. He didn't do it. It was a company that did it. And as he mentioned before, it's public record. Any of you should ask for it to see it. And that said, based on the market value of square footage in this town, if they would give, buy 2 properties that were side by side, that we could then either sell it back or open spaces, what we were supposed to do, what that dollar amount would look like. And that's how we ended up with the 1.5. 1 point, if you want to add anything else to that, that's.
Yeah, just to clarify, it was an appraisal that was done, and as I mentioned before, in order to look at just the zoned area would not have been practical because there does not exist that square footage in the zoned area. So we then looked at it from the perspective, well, having the $2.5 million, we'd have to come to some type of blended number, taking into account the entire footprint of the village. So it's not as though that the developer didn't come. I think the initial offer from the developer was it $600,000, or I have to go back and look at the figure, but the developer.
The initial was the cost of 2 police officers times 3 years.
Right.
It was about 287.
Right, exactly. The initial offer that the developer came in was at $287,000, and we arrived at the 1.1 after we commissioned the appraisal. So, as I mentioned before, the residents, you can take a look at the appraisal, look at the benchmarks in there and the methodology, and as you can imagine, once we had our number based upon the appraisal and they had their number, the negotiation took over, and we arrived at somewhere in the middle, which is what usually happens at the 1.1.
And then the manager had done her homework with the CFO, as she said painstakingly, to calculate what it would cost. There's a difference between maintaining and upgrading our open spaces, and what would the cost of upgrading it and what would be the cost of maintaining it. this property, if this development is to move forward, it's not gonna happen in the next 3 to 6 months. It'll happen in the next 1 to 3 years, that the village will be able to see sort of the economic development work in terms of tax dollars. So the 1.1 would somewhat cover us for the next 3 years in terms of police officers and potentially a public works, and really earmark it to upgrade our green space that really needed it more than anything, whether it was Sherwood Forest, the Tot Lot, the Little Rivers, and the Nature Trail. They're all craving an upgrade right now because they've been in existence for quite a while. And then thereafter, with the development in place already, hopefully those dollars that are going to be come in will continue that maintenance program that we would have, because part of the money would be for the upgrade, because most of parks here need to be upgraded.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious to know what the developers see as their long-term vision for this property. Would you be able to speak to that a little bit?
This is it.
Come to the podium, please. Thanks.
My name is Arthur Barrington. I'm representing the development project here. This is the long-term vision. We are a family development company. We're interested in developing a multi-family and commercial project that we would hold and manage and continue to be part of the community here at El Portal.
Okay, as opposed to sell to a larger management company in the near future?
Yeah, we have no
Okay.
plans to
Okay.
develop and market the property.
Okay.
Apologies, Councilperson Roman, did that answer your question? Okay. I apologize. Councilperson Urban, Councilperson Mathis?
I have one comment. It sounds like a great opportunity to get a trust fund started for public works specifically. So, looking at this agreement, it certainly seems like an incredible amount of work and diligence has been done, and this particular part of the agreement is pretty exciting. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Now we're gonna close the committee meeting and open up for public comments. So let's go ahead and close the committee meeting, and I ask each resident here, there's 3 of them, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I think that we are only as good as the input that you all provide us, and this is really important. I had a resident that texted me and says, hey, what tonight is about? And I said, listen, I can't go back and forth right now, you gotta show up. I'm a little busy, but thank you so much for being here and for being a part of the process. State your name and address for the record.
Courtney Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th Street. Madam Mayor, I don't know if, since this is kind of workshopy, whether you want me to direct questions to you or to Pluserbia or to the developers, or how you want me to approach things.
You can ask the questions, and the best party to answer, I'll ask to kindly, if it's going to be them, they can answer it from there. If it's going to be us, I'll always defer to the manager and to the attorney, and then if not, I'll chime in, okay? Or, of course, to Pluserbia.
Okay.
But as a chair, you have to address to me.
Very good. My first question, in my reading of our form-based code on the Zone 5 standards, it specifically states the lot area is 10,000 to 40,000 square feet. This lot is substantially larger than that. Am I misreading this? And if so, can you point me to where I should be, or how I should be reading it?
I'm going to defer to Juan from Pluserbia.
Thank you, Corey. So real quick, the way that this you're absolutely right. That is a maximum lot size. These lots were grandfathered in based on the fact that they were already by the same property owner. So it applies to, you can't just go and buy 3 lots, assemble, and then have a large project, because then that will kick in. But if your properties are already assembled, it's considered grandfathered in. Just as if you have a non-conforming fence in your property, you can keep it, you can't rebuild it, or you can't build it new that doesn't go with the code.
Okay, but they are 2 separate lots that are owned by 2 separate folios. So because they are owned by the same owner,
They're assembled.
They're assembled, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, fair enough. And let me start.
That was not convincing, but
No,
okay.
No, it's not at all. because I would expect that the form-based code would have that sort of statement that would say, prior to XYZ date, these sorts of things are grandfathered in. And I may not have read it properly, which I'm more than happy to say. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I read it as a layman, so.
So if I may, what we are doing is currently we are using the standards that are used in other municipalities, and that's the Miami 21 also has minimum lot standards, and they are used when developers come in and try and assemble large properties so that the projects are not massive, but when properties are already assembled or owned by the same property owner, then they're considered grandfathered in even though they are a little larger.
Understood. As a layman reading it,
Sure.
I don't see it, but fair enough.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm not opposed to developing the property. I want to be very clear on that. I have concerns on some of the details. To whomever, probably the architect maybe, what is the planned height of the building?
Good evening, my name is Anna Trencher from Morris Architects. The total height of the building is 83 feet in height.
Okay.
That's
so,
an 8-story building.
Yep, so that's on the lower side of what they are allowed, which
Yes.
is
It is.
nicer for the surroundings, because to the council, I'm concerned, or sorry, to the committee, my apologies, to the committee, I am concerned that the height is significantly larger than the surroundings. Understand it's Zone 5, understand they're allowed to, have no problem with that, but if I were living next to them in El Portal, I'd be, what just happened to my property? I also, in the developer agreement, it says no less than 282 units. If my calculations are correct, they are allowed up to 283, and Juan, I could be wrong, but why, can we, instead of saying no less than, can we address that as no more than? Because according to units.
So just to recap what the mayor said at the beginning of the meeting, and I'm happy to answer all the questions about the development.
Yep.
We will also have the ability to go into the development as well, by the way, just so that we're all on the same page, when we go over the site plan and a special exception. So we have plenty of time to discuss and meet out, on the side if you want to meet with us, and we can go over it. Their maximum densities are
150.
Are 150 per acre. So that's what establishes the maximum. Regardless of what the development agreement says, we still have that cap. So we can't. So even if they say a minimum of 60, we're still capped at 150 per acre.
So you're
per acre.
Confirming that based on their square footage, they can have no more than 283, even though the statement says at least 200 or a minimum of 282. And I apologize if I'm reading the agreement wrong, but the agreement said at minimum.
Their maximum lot size, their lot size currently, what is the calculation, Camila? I don't have all the math. 1.88, so that's 1.88. It's better on my calculator. 282.7, there you go.
So the
maximum of 282.7.
At minimum 282 doesn't mean at minimum. No, the agreement, not what you're saying, which I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but the agreement says at minimum 282. So I'm a little concerned that there is the intention or hope of doing more than 282.
As long as they don't go over the maximum established by the code, which is 150 per acre, they're allowed to go up to 150 per acre. Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
There's no plan to go more than that.
Right. If the wording switched from no more than to...
And I think your point, there's no ability to either.
Okay, I mean, just the way I read it was, is there some hope that now we're going to get another exception to do 500 units or something like that? Okay.
For that, if we were to somehow bring that to the council, that would tip off a whole series of other issues that are, no one is considering that at this point.
There's also no mechanism in the code that allows for any exception past density. Because we're
it's not a variance capable
No,
thing.
because we're also regulated by the comprehensive plan.
Okay. So now I'd like to get on a soapbox for 20 seconds and then I'll step off and ask the financial question. We have in the world a very limited amount of green space. I caution us from selling it out. We are talking about increasing our village by between 20 and 30% of residents in one development. We are not adding any green space for that. Once something is built, it is not going to be torn down and put into green space. So I really caution, as a fiscal conservative who cares about the environment, I caution that there's no going back once it's built. Okay? So if the intention of the code is to ensure that we get green space, if we're going to have higher density to balance it out, we're failing that by accepting money. Okay? All of us want money. Good with that. But I would like to know some more details on how the 1.1 came up. And moreover, how does this affect the future development, say, of the trailer park property? Are they going to be able to just buy their way out? Because part of me says it's okay that it is hard to find property to satisfy that. That means we don't get such increased density in height, or excuse me, such increased height. So how did we get to 1.1? Please, I know we talked about it. We talked about 2.5 million was the equivalent assessment. Not anything against you gentlemen, but there's a reason why that's going to be difficult. That's a balance that has to be driven between the actual desire of what appear to be well-intentioned developers. They're here to make money. That's good. That's American way. I'm good with that. But there's the balance with what is the benefit to the rest of the civics. And before I sit down, I'll also say we do not need more police officers to patrol that area until the property is done, and at that point we will have the revenue coming in from their new tax base to pay for that. So I am very concerned that we're taking one-time payments as opposed to forever property. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Courtney, so you left a couple of things open. You want, well, let's talk a little bit more about the 1.1. I didn't know if the attorney or the manager wanted to, or Juan.
No, I would just like to speak to the trailer park, just so that I can appease that doubt from you. The trailer park requires and has the ability to provide open space within their property because it's a very large site. And the special district plan standards requires a percentage of that land to be devoted to open space.
Yeah.
Regardless of any bonuses that are given to them in terms of additional floors. So when they do that master plan, they will be required a certain percentage to be devoted to open space. And just the last thing, the difference with this project is that this project is a smaller parcel that is a single building, and so the open space that is required, they are providing for their own residents as it's required by the code. The open space that we're discussing is for the additional bonus, right? So just to make that difference for you, the trailer park will be required actual green space within the property.
Right, but we've set the precedence now that in addition to that green space in the property, if they want to go up 2 floors, they write a check. They don't give us any more green space. That's the precedence we're setting here, which I think is extremely dangerous. That's why I'm cautioning.
Thank you.
I didn't know if the manager or the attorney wanted to add anything else.
I did have.
Hold on,
Yeah.
I'll come back. Any more public comments?
I'm short. Lee Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th Street. My question is, knowing that this is going to be a rental property, what does that do for our percentage of homeowners versus rentals in our neighborhood, as far as people in our community and looking at our community to come and live and work and play? You know, when we look and compare ourselves to Biscayne Park and Miami Shores, what does that do for our residents that live here? And just wondering if there's a percentage is our percentage of rental going up and home ownerships going down? So that was really kind of on my mind as far as that, where does that put us as homeowners in a community?
Any other questions? I see one more resident here. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close public comments and open it up back to the council. I believe Councilperson Urban had a question.
First question is, when the village acquired this annex property, what was the goal at that time for that property?
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
When we acquired the property.
When the property
Yeah.
was annexed?
Was there an initial purpose or stated goal of
That happened in December of 14, and it was a time where the county wasn't even allowing any annexing. And at the time, our manager, Jason Walker, not only looked at that area, but he had also looked at going to I-95. And they actually were, the county was willing, because it was unincorporated, the county was willing to give us that whole area as well as the annexed area, but Jason was, no, we want all of West 7th Avenue. So at the time, the whole thought process was, when we presented it all together, it was all the way past to Northwest 7th Avenue and the annexed area. It was what happened to have been available at the time to annex potentially for our whole area. The county came back and said, you can have the annexed area and you can have up to Northwest 6th Avenue, but you can't have 7th Avenue, which would be the commercial district. And then when we did the analysis with the police officers and the cost of the police officers, it wasn't prudent for the village to take that on, because at that time, that area, in terms of police coverage, was not great. And Jason Walker presented to us to take the annexed area, which was a blighted area, but it was also vacant, and right across from it, there was it was a challenging townhomes there, where we had no control over, because it was City of Miami and unincorporated, and there was drug use and all of that good stuff. So that's when we at that time agreed to take that in the hopes that there would be some kind of development that would be a win-win for the village. And that was back, we finally got everything solidified in June of 15. Councilperson Mathis, you want to add something?
Yeah, there's a little bit more to the story. In researching, we had already found out that the annex property was already ours and we weren't maintaining it, and somehow it got lost in the shuffle. And that was one of the things that Commissioner Emerson helped us get through. We had to annex it, but it was already the village's property, but somehow it got lost in translation. And yeah, the skipping of the boundaries, the county didn't want to do that. So, but there was no intent of anything. It was, we looked at it as it was already ours, so we just put it in the annex. They actually told us to put it in the annex packet.
Then how is it that, how did the relationship between the developers and the village begin? Was there an ad posted for land for sale, or how did that occur, just out of curiosity?
Gosh, I mean, I think I've been talking to them for years. They started talking to Jason Walker, and the conversation just started from there. And then I think they were working on multiple projects, and then they put it off because of the little farm. There was closing down. I mean, you all be more than welcome to jump in and fill in. I mean, my memory only goes so far, but and then we just every once in a while they'll email the manager, or the email, and then there was a change of manager, so they would defer to the mayor, and then we just, here we are. It's been
as organic as it can happen. We just bought the property with no relationship with any of the council members or the mayor, and we demolished an existing asset there that was.
Oh, that's right.
That's
right, I forgot about that. I forgot about that, yeah.
Running drugs and selling drugs there.
Yeah.
So we took on that property, and we started talking to Jason Walker a few years later. So I think it was 2012 when we bought that site.
Okay. Then just one more question, I think, maybe two, but so this is a family-owned company, is what you're saying? Okay. For example, because the concerns over rental versus owners, that's kind of part of why I was asking, what's your long-term plan for the property, right? Because I've only recently been a homeowner for about 6 years now, and I'm 40, so most of my life I've been a renter. And I used to have a landlord in my phone name was Slumlord in my phone, and but I also had a landlord. I also had a landlord who I still stay in touch with today, for example. So I would hope that with the type of entity that's going to be there, it sounds like you guys would feel more comfortable having long-term tenants, for example, less worry, that they're going to sign the lease the next year. So one of my questions would be, do you have a standard operating practice, for example, within the family business of increasing leases by a specific percent like each year? Is there, you know what I'm saying? So anything that would affect the ability of people to maintain long-term leases with you, which would increase the likelihood that the renters there would be better stewards of the property, right? Which is a large concern.
Yeah, as a multifamily property owner, the longer a tenant stays with you in your property, the better it is for both sides. So we, one of the things that we monitor is, what percentage of our tenants are re-signing with us every year, and that's a big operating metric, and we try to strive to make that as high as possible. We'll have a professional third-party management company that will be here at the building, and that will be our objective.
Okay.
We don't have, in terms of rate increases, that's obviously a market rate number, and
right.
Kind of a case-by-case situation. There is no standard metric or policy.
But in terms of philosophy,
what happens every year.
But in terms of philosophy, you definitely feel like it's better fiscally to have long-term tenants or guaranteed occupancy, right? So yeah.
In short, losing a tenant is
costly.
Operationally a costly
Right.
thing to do, and something that, all else being equal, you would prefer to avoid.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
Anything else? No. Councilperson Mathis, Councilperson Roman. I just want to add a couple of things. Courtney and Lee, you guys are great neighbors. You guys are great residents. You're very smart. Your comments have been well noted. I understand about the whole rental and ownership in terms of what that it's going to do to the village. I'm a little older than Councilperson Urban, but I know what it's like to be a renter. And there's got to be also availability for them. Those are people that, perhaps can't afford to buy at the moment. And sort of that opportunity for them, I agree. Long-term renters, having been a landlord myself, current landlord, long-term tenants are the best. Turnaround costs too much money to have to fix and repair. But we factored all that in. And Courtney, I'm going to tell you, we had so many conversations about open space. And Juan from Preservia is a huge advocate for open space and probably yelled at me a few times, but I get it. And it's not, we're not overlooking it. The little farm, I don't know who the council will be at the time when that comes forward, but that's going to be a whole other delicate situation that really needs to be properly walked through or seen through. It'll be handled a little differently than I would believe this project. You can't even compare in terms of the size. But there was one thing that I was really adamant about is that I want our current public space to look better, be better. I want the nature trail expanded. It's a vision that we've had for a few years now. And this is a real opportunity to be able to have some leverage to be able to actually make that happen with the school now that things are moving forward with them. I mean, there is other opportunities for small pockets, our Little River Estates Park as well. I mean, Sherwood Forest was such a beautiful park. And it has so much opportunity, but it's been abandoned and it needs a little upgrade. It needs to be fixed, the lights, the fountain. So I would like to see how all of that will look when it's actually upgraded. Our tot lot, the tarp that's over it, it's old. It's there's a difference between, as we spoke earlier, maintaining and upgrading. Or, when you have to replace the whole roof or when you're going to fix the faucet. I mean, there's such a difference. They looked at the North Miami Avenue property, which there's two next to them, side by side. All that was looked at. So it's not like we didn't, and it's not like green space is not important. It really is. And if one thing I've learned being up here is that this community loves green space. When I go to Coconut Grove, when I go to other places outside of El Portal, if we don't do good practice now, we won't have this El Portal forever. I don't know if any of you read the paper on November 4th, the Business Monday, when we came out there as far as being the example of what's right in Miami-Dade County. We are that place that still has that sort of quaintness and green space and trees and the value of that. So from my time here and as long as I'm here, that'll always be a priority. And I said last night at the council meeting, I've never looked at trees the way I do now. I've never looked at sidewalks the way I do now, in parks, and the value of what trees and parks and all of that amazing green space. And if you do a lot of big buildings, you're going to lose all that. And then what? And then you won't have the Coconut Groves anymore. So I don't want to say that you guys have not been heard. I know for me, you've been heard. And one thing I've learned from the members of the council that I sit up here with, and they're pretty passionate about green space too. So this is just one, and I know that, I don't know how familiar you've seen the project, but the project that they're working on, they are going to have green space on their, for their residents, that we don't really know if they're going to really use a green space that we have in our area, because the Cavista is a little disconnected from us. To answer, I think, your question in the beginning is how is it going to be all tied in? I think we talked in one of the meetings is when they do the signage of the Cavista to put El Portal. So it's the Cavista in El Portal. I don't know where that signage would go. But you guys have been heard, and as Juan said, tonight's about the agreement, but all those little other nuances, thank you, that's the word. There's going to be a town hall. There's going to be a few readings. You are one of the only residents who are always vocal and have excellent comments, and I encourage you and ask you to please continue to be a part of the process, because your comments are always welcomed. You don't look happy, but okay. Any other comments from the?
I
Yes.
have one more question, just as a point of clarification. The 1.1 million that we're talking about is specifically to be set aside in a trust for public works. Is that correct? Is it going into general?
No,
Okay.
we're setting it aside to utilize for public works.
So we can start earning interest on that first, on that first payment of the 3, we'll be able to start earning interest almost immediately on that. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
In the trust fund?
What is the question? I'm sorry, say it again.
I'm saying that I just want to be clear that the 1.1 that we're talking about, because of the issue, the very real concern regarding open spaces, green spaces, I just want to be clear that this money is not entering general funds. This money is specifically going into a trust fund for public works, correct?
It's going into a trust fund, but it's not just going to be public works that we're utilizing the funds for.
Okay. What other?
Public safety.
Okay.
I'm going to utilize it for police.
Juan's going to say something, but I want to remind the committee something, the committee and the council. The manager, doesn't matter who the manager is, cannot spend more than $5,000 without our approval. So at the end of the day, it is really going to be our responsibility as to what's going to happen with the money. And I say it to all of you who may outlive my time here, you all must remember that. It's an important fact. It's the money is not going to it should not just disappear. It should not be spent on anything. And you all, as the council and as the committee and as admin and finance, are going to be essentially responsible for that. So don't forget that. Okay. Juan, did you want to add something?
I was going to defer to the attorney, but I think that there is another item that talks about
specifically
how to put together this trust fund.
Yes.
And that should set how to spend those monies. And you can be as specific or as vague as you want as a council to draft and to create that trust fund.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Yes, Councilperson Roman.
I have to ask, because I just have to. But I personally discussed this with the manager. I think the 1.1, although it may seem like a lot, it's not a lot. So I'd like to ask if we have considered increasing that a little bit
Well, we went through that negotiation extensively, and that's how we arrived here. So we started at a much lower amount, and as was discussed, there were,
More money?
yeah.
I apologize.
No, not a problem. There were even properties identified that could have been acquired for less than the 1.1.
May I? So, when we were going through it, I remember thinking to myself, you know, I'm going to take my mayor's hat off, and I live here, and I work here. I own my building for my school, and I own a home here, and I will live here longer than I will be the mayor here. And if I was sitting in the audience and I looked at the town of this size, and if the council was receiving $2 million on a property of this size, I'd be like, that just doesn't sound right. You know, we're small. And while and again, so that's how I saw it. So when 2.5 came forward, and the initial 287 was brought forward, but clearly that wasn't really going to work. I didn't think that was going to. That I didn't think. I in my mind, I thought, what is going to be okay with the residents? What are they going to look at and say, what, you just accepted 1.7 million? It's a little egregious, in my opinion, for the village of Versailles. At least that's how I saw it. But again, we're all here. There's 5 of us for us to really talk about it and what we feel most comfortable. And at the same time, I believe that it had to be a win-win-win. I wanted the residents to not feel like we were doing something wrong. I didn't want the property owners to think that we were like, you know, being sort of overzealous on our first project. And at the same time, it had to feel, in my opinion, it had to feel right. And at the end of the day, would it have been great to have gotten a huge open space and have a beautiful park? But all I kept thinking was, oh my gosh, look at the 5 parks we have. They're so poorly maintained. And they all need to be upgraded. They all need to have a better plan. And to me, that number just seemed relative to the size of who we are as a village. That's how I saw it. But I'm only one person.
Well, Mayor Cabillas, and if I may add to that to help you, perhaps compared to a municipality that doesn't have the benefit of El Portal, I think you have an abundant amount, as you say, like Coconut Grove, better than Coconut Grove. Coconut Grove has lost a lot of its green space and its canopy. And I think that was the sort of the gist of the article, you know, Paradise Lost, and you guys still have that paradise. But if you look at the city of Miami as a municipality, they have a very similar form-based code, and the benefit for adding floor area, which is essentially what we're doing, we're not adding density, we're adding floor area, is based on a map. And in this area, the benefit, so if you just went across the street and did the same thing in a T5 where you could benefit to 2 stories, would be around $12 to $13 a square foot from the city that you would buy. And you could probably buy it for less from the historic district because the MIMO district sells historic floor area that they can't use to developers at about $10 a square foot. But let's say you bought it at $12 a square foot, and we're buying 60,000 square feet, 62,000 to be exact. That comes to about $720,000. So you're getting much more than that simply by being across the street and having your own code. So I don't know if that helps, but that's the way I see it.
I'll open it up to any other committee members, to what one of the committee members has asked. Councilperson Mathis.
I think it's a pretty fair deal. I did have some concerns when I first heard what the number was, and then I looked at the formula and saw how they worked it out, and then I looked at what made sure I dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, and I think that it's gonna be a good thing for us as a whole, meaning the developers and the village and the residents. There's a lot of things not putting it all on them, but there's a lot of things that we need to take care of, and this is gonna be a good start. It's our first real development, so we're being very cautious about it, but I think it's a fair number. That's just my take on it.
Councilperson Urban? No. Councilperson Roman? Any other questions for anybody, the council, does public need me to reopen before I move on? And just so that you know, all we're gonna do is, we're not voting on this agreement, we're actually gonna move on to the ordinances. One of the ordinances are tied into the agreement, and that ordinance is the one that would be moving forward, and when it moves forward to the full council, if it does, that it goes attached to the agreement, and the attorney will walk us through each one. But before I go on to, agenda item F2 and F3 and F4, any other questions? Councilperson Roma, I can't hear you.
I'd like to open it up again, just in case any residents have anything
I'm looking
else.
at the residents. Any other, would you like me to reopen it up for any questions before I move on? We are gonna be going through the ordinances, and you're gonna have another opportunity to be able to ask more questions, okay? And each ordinance is going to have a specific, and then the attorney will walk us through. AJ, Ken, real good? Ken, okay. With that said, let's go ahead and go to F2. F2, I'm gonna defer over to the attorney. We have 3 ordinances in front of us to review, 06, 07, and 08.
Ordinance number 2019-06 would be the ordinance approving the development agreement, and the development agreement would be an Exhibit A to the ordinance. I can read it into the record, and if the chair wants to vote on that item and then move on to the next, we can do it that way also. The ordinance, ordinance number 2019-06, an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of El Portal, Florida, approving and authorizing the mayor and village manager to execute and to otherwise enter into a development agreement between the Village of El Portal and BH 495 Northeast 83rd Street LLC for the development of property located within the village as recorded in Official Records Book 28751, pages 808 through 809, and Official Records Book 28673, pages 4489 to 4491 of the Public Records of Miami-Dade County, Florida, and as more fully described in the development agreement, which is attached here to as Exhibit A, authorizing the appropriate village officials to do all things necessary to effectuate the intent of this ordinance, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. So that would be the ordinance that would approve the development agreement. So as we mentioned before, the code did not specifically provide for a cash contribution to the trust fund in lieu of donating open space as part of the project. So the code required 2 amendments. The first would be to provide for a trust fund contribution, and then the second ordinance amendment would be to create the Public Benefits Trust Fund. So I'll read the first one. And ordinance number 2019-07 is an ordinance of the Village Council of El Portal, Florida, amending Article 8, Public Benefits Program, Section 24B.21 to provide for trust fund contribution to the Public Benefits Trust Fund, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repeal or severability, codification, and an effective date. Ordinance number 2019-08 is an ordinance of the Village Council of El Portal, Florida, amending Article 8, Public Benefits Program, Section 24B.21 to provide for the establishment of a Public Benefits Trust Fund, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repeal or severability, codification, and an effective date. Let me specifically get into some points about this ordinance because it answers some of the questions that were raised earlier by Councilman Urban and others. The salient aspects of the trust fund is that the funds are going to be designated as written to support reinvestment in infrastructure and supplement public parks and open space and civic space or civil support space and streetscape improvements within the village boundaries. That would be subsection A as amended. The subsection B would require, as discussed earlier, an administration of a financial report on trust fund receipts and expenditures shall be prepared annually at the close of the fiscal year by the city manager for review and approval by the village council prior to filing with the clerk. So in other words, as was asked before, this trust fund is going to be open, transparent, and prior to approval, it has to come back to the council for its input and approval. So if there's any questions, I can answer them on either of the ordinances.
I'm going to open up for public comments, but so there's three ordinances. One is an ordinance for the actual agreement.
Correct.
The second is the ordinance to amend the code to allow for the monies to be received in lieu of open space. And the last ordinance is how
To
the
create the
trust fund is
Right.
going to be
But
created.
if
Okay.
if you will, the last one is the implementing language.
All right. So there are three that have to move before the council, and I would, because of the importance of each one, if they were to move to the full council, the question is now to the attorney. Both readings, so there's two readings per each ordinance. Will each reading require to be publicly noted?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Right.
So just a note that for the clerk.
And and if I may, in terms of order of approval, the order would be to approve the trust fund creation and also the implementing ordinance, and then the last ordinance would be the development agreement.
Okay, so the first ordinance that we should be discussing right now is ordinance number,
2019-07, and then 2019-08, and then the last 2019-06. In other words, you don't want to approve a development
Absolutely.
agreement that doesn't provide for an action that's not permitted or contemplated under the code right now.
so when I amended the agenda, F2 was 2019-07, F3 was 2019-08, and F4 was 2019-06, which would be appropriate.
Right. You can-
Okay. So let's focus on 2019-07. From the council, before I open it up to the public, any questions on this particular ordinance of 2019-07? To the council, to the committee, this is the time to ask the attorney any questions on this particular ordinance.
I have one question.
Absolutely.
This
Go
is,
ahead.
this is affecting Zone 5 only, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's still remains in the section. The only thing we're amending is subsection C and then adding a paragraph 3.
Okay, my specific concern would be that we not be affecting Zone 4.
Now, this is only
Okay.
as it applies to Zone 5.
Right,
That's it.
right, okay.
And Councilperson Urban, you can see that in section 24B21, if you look at A, B, and C, it says it right there, just for clarity, because I was going to make sure that Zone 5 was actually listed on that.
20 years waiting tables taught me to assume nothing.
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't matter what you're doing, we'll always assume nothing. I agree on that. Any other questions to the attorney from the committee? 2019-07. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to open up for public comments. Let's close the committee meeting and open up for public comments for 2019-07. Courtney, name and address for the record.
265, Courtney Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th Street. I'm first confused as to why we're not talking about 8, because 7 would put money into a fund that wouldn't exist without 8. So, right, if I read 7, it specifically states the money goes into, in 3, it says a trust fund contribution, but if we don't have 8, the trust fund doesn't exist.
Yes, I mean, I think that's correct. I mean, that's a good point. So we would reverse the order and create the fund and the.
8 should need to be passed first.
876.
That's correct.
8 has to be passed
Right.
first.
We had originally proposed it as one ordinance. That is correct. 8 should be before 7.
The second thing is on, still talking about 7,
You can talk about 7.
because that's what you want me to talk about now, right? Okay. On 7, the 10 to 15% of the market area's weighted average sales price per square foot. In this particular situation, what would those numbers be? That would be the items in section 2D, B, 3. Or D3. D3, sorry.
Where exactly are you at?
I'm sorry, I'm in ordinance -07.
Uh-huh.
The third page, printed page, right above section 3, the underlined section 3, the
Okay.
item number 3 above that. It says the calculation assumes the land value per saleable or rentable square foot within market area to equate to 10 to 15% of a market area's weighted average sales per square foot. If we applied that to this situation, what would it be? That right there.
Numbers. I'd have to run the numbers.
Well, I guess my question is, if this is what we're saying the number should be, I hope that 1.1 million works into that, right? I mean, otherwise, we're setting ourselves up for whether it's legal challenge or just insanity. I mean,
Does Juan, our attorney, can you?
This was the language that we came up with, looking at other.
This is the current language that we have. In this case, I mean, one of the things that, and again, we are,
Say something, say something.
this is the committee, so this is where we're working things out so that it goes up to full council. One of the things that we could do is change that into a development agreement.
I think it's good to have something like this as a basis, as a range. Hey, this is how we do this process. I like that. But I'm questioning, I don't know
I understand.
what 10 to 15%, whether that means 10,000 to 15,000 in this case, or 10 million to 15 million. I have no clue.
It's a good point.
And I would just want the 1.1 to fit into whatever we're saying here, which would make sense.
We'll definitely look into that and work it out before it goes to full council.
I don't think I have anything else on this list, but I will have on 08.
Okay.
Thank you.
I asked the council that if you have anything to say, it's got to be said in the microphone, but murmuring back here doesn't help. Okay, please. Any other comments from the public? Questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to close it up to the committee and close up the public comments to the committee. Any comments?
The structure is the structure, but if there's a negotiated amount, then the numbers aren't going to match up precisely because it's a structure, and then there's an amount that comes from the structure, and then there's the negotiation. So there's going to be. That's my understanding of it. I get where you're coming from. I'm just saying that to hold on to the 1.1 being the number that is going to fit in there isn't right because it's a negotiated amount from another number.
So I think in an effort to mitigate the confusion, I asked the attorney to take a look at that. Remember, the committee is what we agree it's going to move forward, but the actual readings of the ordinance must be what's going to be more precise. So I asked the attorney to take a look at the underlined section to ensure that we are, thinking along the lines. But I do hear what Councilperson Mathis has to say because one thing is holding stringent to a percentage, and then the other thing is an agreement that comes forward that whether it's the committee or the council, the manager that brings it forward. Generally, be the manager bringing it forward to the committee. But we don't want to make the language so loose that opens it up for anything. So it has to be perhaps, you might want to take a look at that so it accommodates both, but it's not too loose because then you don't want a free for all. You want to be able to have a consistent codified version of what the council will be doing in the future based on this. So it can't be too loose, but it has to also comply.
Right, and that's, his point is excellent. I mean, it's assumptions. And that takes into account what Councilperson Mathis just said. So, but we'll take a look at it. Juan and I will look at it to make sure that it's flexible enough to take into account exactly what we're doing with this, but also is forward-looking.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee on this ordinance?
Also, a point of clarification just for Corey as well, from an earlier question, and we could improve on the language, of course, but I'd like to note that in the language we work with the attorney, this option for a cash contribution is at the discretion of the manager. So the default is to provide open space. And then at the discretion of the manager, we felt that that gave a direction of we prefer open space. But in case that is not possible, then the manager has the ability to start negotiation for a fee in lieu.
Point of clarification, is that manager or council?
Come to the podium, but he said manager.
Again, language can be improved, and we are, whatever you tell us. If you prefer the council to be the one that makes that decision.
Let's have a public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize for
It's
speaking
okay.
from the back. Courtney Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th. I guess my question is whether that is appropriate to be manager, and that was the intent, or whether it was a placeholder and manager put in, and there needs to be that discussion whether it is more appropriate. Because I guess my question is, if we fast forward 20 years, none of us are here, and we've got a manager who's pro-development, doesn't care, and regular citizen caring council, can the manager just say, okay, great, I'll take the cash for the village, we're good, have a good time? And yes, that was very sarcastic and snotty, and I apologize.
No, well, you know what? I think there's an underlying assumption that we cannot make, and that is that all of these types of things are going to come before the committee and council anyway. So the manager will always make recommendations to the committee. Right now, we operate as a committee, then it goes to council. But we can make that assumption, right? So therefore, with that said, perhaps we want to add manager recommends to present to committee, then councils. There's got to be but the manager, because we're a mayor, council, manager form of government, we all have to agree on it. It's never because, the mayor wants this or the council wants or the manager wants this. No, the manager has to recommend, and then we have to, more than 3 of us have to agree on it.
The reason for the manager to be in this is so that things are quick, things move forward, and then, as the mayor said, the manager makes a recommendation to the council. The council still has to approve any agreement, and it goes through a committee, and regardless of who's up here, it'll still go through the same process.
Because if you put on there that the mayor and council, they're going to be what you all are meeting in private with developers, yeah, that wouldn't look good. And the only reason I was meeting with them is I was chair of P&Z, so as moving forward, whoever that chair of P&Z would be meeting alongside things like this. But I wouldn't say that the mayor and council should be doing that. I think the manager should be doing that, and then bringing it to us or to the committee then.
So, if I may, so we can just simply clarify to make it abundantly clear that the manager will be making a recommendation to the council for its approval.
Okay.
And I just want to state, I would always, always make the recommendation before making such a bad decision.
Ooh, okay. Look at that, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments on 2019-07 before I move over to 2019-08? Okay, good. Hearing none, we are going to close public comments. I asked the attorney to walk us through 2019-08. I do like to make mention that please ask any questions and any recommendations. And after this, I'll be asking for a motion to move this to the council, whether it passes or not. So with that said, the attorney, 2019-08.
Right, let's just make sure we have the order clarified. As was pointed out, we're going to have the trust fund established, and then we will have the implementing language. So this will be 2019-07, and the one we just discussed is 2019-08. An ordinance of the Village Council of El Portal, Florida, amending Article 8, Public Benefits Program, Section 24B.21, to provide for the establishment of a public benefits trust fund, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repeal or severability, codification, and an effective date.
For purposes of clarity and transparency, so can you just reiterate exactly this ordinance, please?
We're creating the trust fund first, and then the ordinance that we just discussed will provide for the ability to contribute to the trust fund.
So 2019-08, for clarity purposes, is to be able to modify the code so that we can be allowed to accept funds in lieu of open space, and then thereafter we'll go to 2019-07, which is the creation of the actual trust fund.
Correct.
Any comments from the committee on 2019-08 before I open it up to public comments? And to the committee, you know, these ordinances I know were brought forward in the last 24 hours, but keep in mind, they're going to go through 2 readings. They're both going to be publicly noted each time, but this is the time to ask questions. And no question is a bad question. While we are thinking through, let's open up for public comments, and maybe then the committee will have some questions. Public comments, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Courtney Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th. Sorry to be a pain up here. I'm concerned that this trust fund can be used, or if monies can be transferred out of it for non-park use. And I say park, but you know, you can fudge a little bit around the edges, non-open space, things like, you know, infrastructure. Does that mean I can use it for repaving the road? You know, does that mean I can use it for civil support space, or civic space? Can we use that money to upgrade the roof here, which we just did, but that sort of thing? So I would caution and urge you to make this trust fund extremely tight so that monies cannot be transferred out. Nothing that should be operating outside of the parks should be in this. Police shouldn't be in this, none of that. Love the police department, but when we have more revenue from the new development, we'll be able to fund more police. We'll need more, and we'll be able to fund more. So I strongly urge you or suggest that you tighten this very tight so that monies cannot be transferred out and used for other purposes. Having been involved in other state politics for a long time, I know the games that can be played, not that we do play them, but that can be played to move money out. So making this as tight as possible is strongly desired. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay, hearing none. For the attorney, I have a question. So if I take a look at section 24B 21-.5, Public Benefits Trust A1, this is either for Juan or the attorney. I know you both worked on this. Where do we get that language from?
I tweaked it. Basically, I think the comment is accurate. The way it's drafted now, it's very broad. So to the extent that the village wants to use the trust funds for, as was mentioned, non-park purposes, it can. It can be limited to and just simply apply just to public parks, open space, and streetscape improvements. That's a decision the council has to determine on its own.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what the committee has to say. I'm inclined to,
just for the record, the consultant wanted to limit it just to parks and open space. I was the one that recommended broadening it a little bit, so to be fair.
You know, and let's think about this for a second. So it would be really, really prudent of us to ensure that this cannot be attractive to those on the outside wanting to potentially think that we have all this money now, right? So I think it would be really prudent for the village, the council, the committee, excuse me, to take a look at that language and ensure that it's pretty specific. I'm okay with public safety, but it would, to me, if I had to pick an order, it would be open space, upgrade and maintain of our existing. If we have to outline what those are, and public safety, I think we really need to. And then if we actually say public safety, I think we need to define what that means, because that just can be a free-for-all for public safety. It cannot be to give them all raises right now as much as they all deserve that. When we say public safety, it would mean the addition of police officers. It wouldn't mean, police cars or even though we factored that in, I think. But I think that we have to really take a look at that, because I think that would be really important. So I open it up to the committee on that note. So my two things would be open space existing open space upgrade and maintenance and improvement, and public safety, and define that by saying 2 new police officers.
And I would, if I may, I would not. I would probably also include the potential acquisition of additional space as an option.
So that if we found the space and we wanted to purchase it, okay. But keeping it to open space. Okay, Councilperson Mathis.
I really think with the opening of it saying reinvestment in the infrastructure, I think that's what it should really be based upon. The infrastructure, as far as obtaining more green spaces, a public works officer, someone that's going to actually be in the public work realm, dealing with, maintenance of the lawns to repairing of the water fountain. I think it truly should be earmarked for infrastructure.
If we use the word infrastructure, you can mean septic to sewer.
Well,
it can mean
no.
a lot of things. I think infrastructure is too loose of a term.
Infrastructure usually is based on public works items.
But that doesn't mean open space. Doesn't mean open space. Infrastructure is too broad.
May I?
Councilperson Roman.
Okay. I agree. I think infrastructure means a lot of things, and it's a loosey-loosey term that's being used quite often now. But I agree with Courtney. I would not include public safety in there. And I like the public parks. I like what Juan just mentioned.
The potential addition of future open space?
Correct. So maintaining our current and potential of future. But I like to see that this language a little tighter.
Councilperson Urban.
I definitely agree with what Courtney said, and then also what Vamari is saying as well in terms of tightening up the language on. I think we got too many mics on. And so my comments earlier was, for example, in the nonprofit world, something like this would be considered like an angel donation. All right, so this is a large sum of money. This is that you're able to, that it's a windfall, right? And so I initially got excited about this particular piece of the agreement because of the word trust fund. I've never had a trust fund. I've been to a lot of parties where kids with trust funds are there, but in terms of the true spirit of that, it's an opportunity in my mind to set up a mechanism where we're able to fund parks within Public Works long-term, where you can almost like check it off and know that it's taken care of, and you can, worry about other things, right? So I see this as a sincere opportunity to potentially really, truly check a box within the budget, right? And be able to account for like long-term planning. And then, I personally feel that I wasn't really involved back then, but I would absolutely have loved for the village to have acquired the sanctuary. And so when it comes to, acquisition of these spaces, I couldn't agree more with Juan's recommendation that would be a priority in terms of what you would use a lump sum of money like that for. But at least in the meantime, before an opportunity like that would come along, I would think that if it's any way possible to do an escrow style with interest, pay for the Public Works Department long-term, build the trust fund as opposed to start taking legs out of it. For me, that's where my mind is in terms of what to do with something like this. I'll leave it at that.
One point of clarification, Mayor. Part of this language comes from other trust funds that I've been involved in. And those are also set up having a board that is independent from government, like a board that is elected. And it's elected by elected members or by the councils and commissioners. That board is the one that decides where that money is spent within the language of the code. So you could be, I wouldn't use the word infrastructure because infrastructure, at least from a planning standpoint, it also includes engineering and roadway and repavement, but keep it broad and specific, but broad enough so that the board or right can decide exactly how to use those monies within those specific that specific language. That can also be considered by you.
So our attorney and you and the manager have some homework here, because from what I'm hearing from the committee, we all agree that this needs to be used for open space, but we're all saying it differently. So Councilperson Mathis has said Public Works, which is very general. Councilperson Roman, did you say public safety, yes or no? I don't remember that part. You said no public safety. Councilperson Roman does not agree with the term infrastructure because it is too large and loose, and I agree on that as well. No public safety, all public works, but predominantly open space. So she's geared more to open space. Councilperson Urban has used a little bit of both. Nope, he didn't say anything about public safety actually, but he said public works, open space, opportunity, maybe purchase something down the road if there are opportunity to present itself with the village to be able to do that.
I was gonna say I do see how public safety could be incorporated into that. So.
Yeah. And then, in my thought process through all of this, with all of you that were in the process, was the first thing that we came up with, not knowing that we were not going to have the open space, was police officers. That was the first thing that was on the table. Because it generally always is. So my mindset is 100% open space because I'm out and about, like I think a lot of you are, and our open space leaves a little to be desired. And I said that through all of the meetings in the last year with all of you, and quite passionately, I said it a few times that our open space is sad in terms of how it's been kept. So I would very much love to see this. Really Tot Lot upgrade, Sherwood Forest upgrade, Nature Trail, Little River Estates, whether it's adding more benches, whether it's just keeping up with proper landscaping, proper implanting of trees, whatever the case may be, and new canopy, water fountains, and all that good stuff, and public safety. And then I do believe that we talked about having a public works project manager or some type of that person, because as we move forward development, that is going to be necessary to be able to help us manage all of this, because You know, I'll never forget, we had a meeting not that long ago and permits come through, but who sees through it all? You know, someone's got to see through the entity of it, and no one here at the moment is trained or experienced in large developments happening while the norm happens and throughout our town. So I'll open up for public comments if need be, but it really is gonna go to the attorney and to the really the attorney to work through with the language, so it's something that the, I think, committee feels comfortable passing, which is fundamental to move forward with. I think we can all agree that we will pass this, but the language has got to be right. The language is, we can't just pass what we have in front of me. And that's why we're here. Committee's all about workshopping and all that fun stuff, but we want to pass something that we all, 5 of us, as well as our neighbors, are going to be happy with. I think we have a foundation, and the foundation is open space. Now you just have to tweak that where, you know, each of us will feel like it's, you know, we're doing what the right thing is. Councilperson Roman?
Yeah, and just for the record, you know, I think 1.1 may seem like a lot, and it is a lot if it came to my bank account, right? But it's not a lot of money. And we can go through that real fast. So, which is why I'm saying open spaces and not public safety. I agree, you know, public safety is our biggest budget item. And we can work that out once the units are, you know, the building's open and whatever we get from there. But that's my take as to why I feel that this needs to strictly be open spaces, and maybe if we acquire additional space.
If I may?
And I may too.
You could also consider that public safety and open space has a certain relationship with walkability, bikeability, active mobility, which, you know, could access the parks from other places. Right now, you know, it's not just sidewalks, but it's also how do you get to those open spaces? I'm afraid of the word. I'm afraid in general of all public works departments, because they do a lot of things that are not necessarily about that are not necessarily about open space.
Absolutely.
So public works and infrastructure, those kind of terms, just they're very large, they're very loose, and if you give public works the ability to manage an open space fund or a public space fund, we'll end up having beautiful sewer grates. But I'm thinking more, I mean, we can work on the language, and we can bring it back.
I've got a trial balloon, so.
But there's a lot of there's a lot of room for open space, and again, health of the community, that type of language.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, I think I have the language, so I'll tweak it, but it sounds to me that we're talking about to support the acquisition of land for parks and open space, reinvestment in existing public parks, open space, and streetscapes improvements. That's pretty much what it sounds like.
I'd like, Porny, I am gonna get to you. You behind, you can sit down. No, I'm just kidding. Mrs. Liu, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I would. I made the recommendation about public safety because I did go through extensive research with our contractor or consultant, Tischler Bice, and referred to other municipalities as well who've gone through this. And public safety is a concern when you're adding a big development like this. On top of that, if we're doing the parks, we're improving that. I mean, you know this, we have vandalism issues, we have a lot of problems in our parks presently. Law enforcement, public safety is key to maintaining whatever comes from these improvements, but also discouraging the negative activity that happens now. And so that was why I recommended the public safety. Also, infrastructure. We've got to talk about signage, road improvements in that area, and how it impacts the village on this area as well. So there are some things. There is a reason for those recommendations, and I get it. I am in 100% agreement with the need for better and improved public space and parks and open space, but we also need, as part of the maintenance and part of the prevention of, blight and the problems we have presently, we need to also include some aspect of public safety and infrastructure.
Any other comments from the committee before I open it for public comments?
Again, I'm just saying, my only last comment is that 1.1 can be blown through real quick.
I'm going to open it for public comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Courtney Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th Street. The discussion about adding public safety has absolutely nothing to do with this trust fund. If you're saying we need more police, that's fine. We do not need more police to patrol an empty lot or an under construction lot than we do today. When this is active and have people, we will have a larger village budget and we will be able to hire additional police officers with that budget, because using the same tax base or the same tax rate with a significant increase, we will be able to do that. Doing it out of a trust fund is a poor choice. Secondly, this is not just a fund, or at least not labeled just a fund, it's labeled a trust fund. A trust fund is intended to be for long periods of time. It is not intended to be spent out. This is what you do when you endow a chair at an educational institution. You set it up for decades or centuries. This is to echo what Councilperson Roman said. You can blow through it quickly. Let's assume we add 2 police officers, 3 years. That's $100,000 a year for each. I'm ballparking. I have no idea what the actual numbers are. That's over half of it gone. You've not increased our green space. You've not made our existing green space better. I disagree strongly that these funds should be used for anything but what the original rationale for allowing extended space vertically was to get more green space. That's what this should be for. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close public comments. I'm not going to open public comments again for this agenda, so any other public comments? Okay, hearing that. So, Mr. Powell, we need to work the language of this section of the ordinance, as we have discussed, to be able to accommodate what you've heard this evening. With that said, I find it a little difficult to request a motion to approve this to move forward.
Can I assist with that?
Okay.
I mean, I can propose that the proposed ordinance be amended, subsection A1 that we're talking about, to reflect that the funds would be used to support the acquisition of land for parks and open space, reinvestment in existing public parks, open space, and streetscape improvements. That would be the ordinance proposed for the first reading with that tweak, with that amendment.
I apologize, Councilperson Urban. Can you read it one more time? Speak loudly because I couldn't hear it. Okay.
I'll read the whole thing. It would simply state that to support the acquisition of land for parks and open space, reinvestment in existing public parks, open space, and streetscape improvements. And then we'll just, modify it. But that sounds
We'll
kind of
work
like
from
the
there.
baseline of where everybody is forming a consensus on, so that if there's a motion, it could at least move forward with that language incorporated in it.
Give me 1 second. Juan, did you have a comment? Oh, Councilperson Urban?
I just want to say I do in fact agree with Courtney again, and I'm now fully on the side of strictly open spaces, almost exactly as the attorney just read.
Councilperson Roman, Councilperson Mathis?
Could I just get clarification, streetscape, what does that include?
So streetscape right now would be the baseline, and we would work with the attorney to narrow it down. Streetscape right now could be lampposts, it could be benches, it could be trees, it could be
Dog eating stations?
sorry, docking stations?
Doggy do stations.
It could be anything related to the street, but see, in part, that's why typically you put a board in place, so that they are critical about where they spend the money. You know, you have what the attorney mentioned, and then you narrow down what kind of projects are streetscape. I think that is pretty clear when we're talking about open space and parks. You know, that's actually a zoning, those two are zoning terms, so that's pretty clear, and it's based on the zoning map. Streetscape is anything within our streets, and
So, to the committee, this is an ordinance is going to have 2 readings. So I strongly recommend we take a look at the ordinance that we have before us with the amendments that the attorney said and pass it to council, because keep in mind, it's going to go through 2 readings. And we still have 2 opportunities. I asked the attorney that if we opt to do that in an effort not to, it's November, December is right around the corner. You know, it's holidays and all that good stuff. We've workshopped this, I think, enough to know where we all stand at. I really think it's up to the attorney now to put it in black and white, codify it, and get it to us like by Friday. And that way it gives us the opportunity to kind of mull over it and go back and forth with Juan, pick up the phone with the manager, and then that way we can have it for the proper time for the clerk to, notify it, and then we can have it for the December council meeting. That would be my recommendation. I think we've talked it enough. I think we all are pretty clear with where we stand at. I think now it's a matter of actually not just auditorially hearing it, actually seeing it in writing, and where we all have the opportunity to pick up the phone and call Attorney Powell, Manager Lou, or Juan, and say yay, no, and then we take it from there. And then always keep it in mind that when we are first reading, you can still change it. You can still modify it. But I do believe what we will see at a first reading is going to be a little more realistic to what we want and what the residents would want than what we have before us today. Are we all okay with that?
Yes.
Councilperson Urban? Yes.
I have a question about the timing. And so then the first reading would in theory, take place at the general council meeting in December.
Ideally, yeah.
Second reading at the general council meeting in January.
Ideally, if there we were in a situation similar to this, and maybe we had a town hall before the second reading. We can do that, and maybe it goes into February. I think it's really up to all of us. I would encourage each of us, we all live in different streets, to let the residents know what's going on, and it's, it really is up to them to also come here. I think we try to be as transparent as open, but at the same time, we also have to all be fair. I mean, we are here at the 4th Tuesday of every month and all that good stuff. So ideally, December and January, if not latest, December and February.
Okay, and then am I correct in thinking that as soon as we would have finalization on these 3 ordinances, groundbreaking would be taking place shortly after that?
No.
Okay.
No, it's.
So they're not necessarily waiting on us to.
Oh, yeah, they are waiting on this.
Are.
Yes,
Okay.
100%, because
Okay.
the agreement, first is allowing the trust fund, second is creating the trust fund, and then third is approving the agreement. We've only passed 1, we still have 2 more to go that we have to do tonight, because all of them are tied in together, and they are not really going to put that much more. There's a few changes that, Juan has asked them to make, but they want to see that we are actually going to move along with this. They don't want to continue if we are going to come in December, like, yeah, no, we're not going to do this. So as we move this forward and they see that that's going to transpire, then it'll allow them to also move along as well. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So remember, there's just 3 ordinances. Again, first is to allow the trust fund, second is to create actually the trust fund, and then last component is to accept the agreement. And again, we're in a discussion workshop phase. If we passed it all, we're still going to go through 2 readings for all of this. And they're all going to be together. If they're all going to be in December, they'll all be in December. If they're all going to be in January, they'll all be in January. If they're all going to be in February. I don't encourage us to piecemeal it. I encourage us, if we move this, to keep it together, because they're all tied in together. With that said, may I have a motion from the committee to accept this ordinance with the modifications that the attorney has made on the record, but he is still to get it codified and to us.
I'll make a motion.
There's a motion made by Councilperson Roman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Mathis. Any discussion from the committee? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Roll call. Councilperson Urban.
Yes.
Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Councilperson Mathis.
Yes.
Mayor Cubillos.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
And to the attorney and Juan, I kindly ask you, just please make this change and just get it back to the clerk so she can get it to us. By Friday would be great. Next week is a holiday. I'm no longer traveling, so I'll have some reading material and stuff that I can go over with my husband if he wants to talk about, or any residents that are watching that are gonna want to talk about this. I'll be around, and I think it's good for us to actually have it, for the long week, okay? 2019-07. All right, thank you. So that has been passed, and we're going to get the updated version, hopefully by email by Friday. Now we're going to go into, excuse me? No, hopefully we'll get it by Friday, correct? Okay, well. 2019-08, let's go ahead and, if I can please ask the attorney to reiterate 2019-08 to us.
You want to read that back into the record?
Yeah, we've been talking about this for about an hour, so if we can just kind of reiterate, are we all understanding what 2019-08 is?
Well, I'll read it to make it clear. An ordinance of the Village Council of El Portal, Florida, amending Article 8 Public Benefits Program, Section 24-B.21, to provide for the trust fund contribution to the Public Benefits Trust Fund, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repealer, severability, codification, and effectiveness.
My apologies, I meant to read 2019-07. See, I mean, there's just too many numbers here. So 2019-08 is what we just passed. Can you read 2019-07, please? I apologize. Sorry.
That's what I just read.
7.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Listen, we've been here for a while. I've been up since 5:30. Okay, anyway. Any discussion on 2019-07?
Courtney?
I'll open it up to public comments. Should make sure I have all these right. Okay, so we just passed 2019-08. Okay, let me move this out of the way.
Yeah.
So we just passed 2019-08, right? Okay. Okay, so to the attorney real quick, 2019-07.
Seven is the one we just discussed with all of the amendments that you want by
I
Friday.
have way too many paperwork here. Okay, so,
Just to be clear.
okay, please.
07 is the one that creates the trust fund, and we just had the discussion concerning the limiting language that we've discussed concerning open space and parks. And then the other one, which is 08, is basically the direction to be able to fund the trust fund.
Okay, so the one we need to pass, the one we need to discuss and potentially pass next is 08.
Correct. the one
Okay.
funding.
Why did I think it was the other way around? Okay, I've been here too long. Okay. With that said, any comments from the committee to the attorney on 08?
The point, yeah.
What is printed as 07?
Okay, if
changed
point of
their-
clarity has got to come.
Correct.
But if it's a point of clarity, come to the podium, please.
Yes.
Right. Just to be clear, 2019-07 is the ordinance that establishes the Public Benefits Trust Fund.
So point of clarity, is that the one that is currently printed as 08?
Yes.
I don't know
Yes.
what's- yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Attorney, if you could just read it one more time, 07, please.
2019-07 is an ordinance of the Village Council of El Portal, Florida, amending Article 8 Public Benefits Program, Section 24B.21, to provide for the establishment of a public benefits trust fund, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repealer, severability, codification, and an effective date. Okay?
Okay, so, any questions to the attorney on the new ordinance we have before us to, potentially adopt this evening?
No.
Councilperson Mathis?
No.
Councilperson Urban? Public comments? You can, Courtney, this is the time. Okay, so, to the attorney.
1908.
Well, clearly, we're not gonna pass the same ordinance again. So, for the next ordinance that we must pass, can you be sure we read the correct one to the record, the right number?
Right, that's what we're doing.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
We just did
uh-huh,
07, which is the one
Mhm.
creating the trust fund.
uh-huh,
2019-08
uh-huh.
is an ordinance of the Village Council of El Portal, Florida, amending Article 8, Public Benefits Program, Section 24-B.21 to provide for trust fund contribution to the Public Benefits Trust Fund, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repealer, severability, codification, and an effective date.
Any comments from the committee? When you're done speaking, can you please turn off your microphone because it rings? Okay. Any comments from the committee to the attorney? Okay, hearing none. Any public comments? None? Wow. Okay, is there a motion to adopt 2019-08? Motion's been made by Councilperson Mathis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Urban. Any discussion? Juan?
No, just praying.
Madam Clerk, Mayor, roll call. Nothing.
Roll call, Councilperson Urban.
Yes.
Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Councilperson Mathis.
Yes.
Mayor Cubillos.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, now the last ordinance, now keep in mind that these are all ordinances, and I like to repeat myself because the residents are watching. These are all ordinances that are still gonna have two readings. There's gonna be plenty of opportunity to have a lot of questions. Now they're all before us. This is a great time to call the manager, to call the attorney if you have any additional questions. Now we're gonna move to the ordinance that is for the acceptance of the agreement, the Cavista Development Agreement before us. So if I can please have the attorney, and do I have the correct number, 2019-06? Okay, can I repeat that to the record, please?
Can we read it again into the record?
2019-06 is the last one that we have not yet passed to full council, right?
But I read it into the record earlier.
Yeah, let's read it again, because now we're gonna potentially adopt it.
An
Or
ordinance
pass
of the Village Council of the Village of El Portal, Florida, approving and authorizing the mayor and village manager to execute and to otherwise enter into a development agreement between the Village of El Portal and BH 495 Northeast 83rd Street LLC for the development of property located within the village as recorded in Official Records Book 28751, pages 808 through 809, and Official Records Book 28673, pages 4489 to 4491 of the Public Records of Miami-Dade County, Florida, and as more fully described in the development agreement, which is attached hereto as Exhibit A, authorizing the appropriate village officials to do all things necessary to effectuate the intent of this ordinance, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
I apologize. So before us, we have 2019-06. We started off these special planning and zoning committee meeting to discuss the development agreement before us. This ordinance goes alongside the agreement. Therefore, with that said, we cannot just adopt an agreement. We have to adopt the agreement with the ordinance. So what we came here for this evening is for this ordinance. With that said, this is a time that I ask the committee before I ask for a motion. Is there any other further questions on the development agreement? And I'm going to open it for public comments in 2 seconds.
I do.
Yes.
So the agreement on the first page talks about Exhibit A. In what I received, I didn't see any exhibits. So I just want to clarify. Is it included in the contract then?
Yeah, it's an exhibit, it's the legal description of the property. It would be the legal description, so it'll be attached with the final, the first reading.
So if Exhibit A is a legal description, where is it? So, Ben, would you happen to have a copy of the legal description?
We have it in the survey that we submitted and the site plan for the property, so we can provide that as
You
an
could just make
attachment.
sure it's included.
Can, do you actually have it in a format that the clerk can just make a copy?
I think so.
Sure.
Okay, so you already added it. So we have both. I have both exhibits. I'm gonna email them to you.
Please email it to the clerk and then CC the attorney and the manager, please. Please. I understand this agreement has been forwarded since August. I know it's been a little bit, but for purposes of the committee, so they can have the agreement in its totality. So there'll be no questions.
We need to make sure we have B and C as well.
Okay, are we good? Did we get Exhibit A? Did we get the legal description, Madam Clerk? Okay, Councilperson Roman, they're sending the legal description to the clerk with the CC and the manager and the attorney. AJ, you look so excited.
It's almost done.
Ms. Manager, I'm sorry, can you check to see if you got the email?
I just got something.
You did? Oh. They, Ben Fernandez sent an email to the manager, to the clerk, CCU, and the attorney, which is Exhibit A, which is a legal description.
Did you send A, B, and C? I sent them all. Okay, great, thank you.
The internet's not working.
Okay. Okay, so I need you to read that on the record, please.
If they're on their way, I'm good.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that they're included. I'm fine with the agreement, the actual agreement, so I just wanted to make sure that the exhibits were included.
Oh, okay, so Councilperson Mathis.
Okay, we just read the exhibits into the record.
Okay, Attorney Powell, can you please to accommodate Councilperson Roman and Councilperson Mathis? Councilperson Roman is okay that the emails are on its way, but Councilperson Mathis would like you to read into the record. Can you please do this so we can proceed forward?
Exhibit A is the legal description.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Exhibit A is the legal description. Exhibit B. Hold on, it's attachment, hold on one second.
What, are they showing up?
They got me.
Yes, right, I'm just making sure that that's what we're calling it. B, generally B is the site plan, and C is the description of the dedications.
Okay, so Exhibit A is a legal description, Exhibit B is the site plan, and Exhibit C is
The dedication of the easement.
the dedication of the easement. Councilperson Roman, are we all good with that? Councilperson Mathis?
I'm good with that.
Councilperson Mathis, on the record, please.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. With that said, ordinance 2019-06 is the exception or the adoption of our development agreement with Exhibit A, B, and C. Exhibit A being the legal description, Exhibit B being the site plan, and Exhibit C being the easement agreement.
I'll move approval.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Mathis to adopt and to move towards the council meeting ordinance number 2019-06. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Roman. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, make a roll call.
Roll call. Councilperson Erbong.
Yes.
Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Councilperson Mathis.
Yes.
Mayor Cubillos.
Yes,
Motion passes 4-0.
to the council meeting, thank you. With the 3 exhibits. At this time, any good and welfare? Hearing none? Any good and welfare? Hearing none? Moving go once, going twice, okay. I thank you all, thank you for your patience. What? Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I'm not done yet, you go. I'm going to be last, go.
Just a quick reminder, we are having our Shred Day, November 23rd at 10 o'clock. They will show up this time. So anyone that has anything that needs to be shredded, there's going to be a huge truck in front of the Village Hall. Documents only, and it's from 10 to 2. So that's Saturday, the 23rd.
Any other comments on good and welfare? Okay, hearing none. I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the clerk, the attorney, the manager. I feel like I'm Vice Mayor Nickerson right now. Juan from Placerbia, thank you for being here. But more importantly, all the residents that showed up today, and to the Barrington brothers, this has been long awaited. I feel like I've known you all for 11 years, right? But Councilperson Mathis and so I really hope this is the beginning of a fantastic relationship. I want to thank you all. You guys have been great to the village up to date. Let's just keep that relationship going. Thank you for the Halloween candy and all the greatness that you guys did to contribute to our 80th anniversary. And we really hope that this is a long-time collaboration. And we're very excited to be able to potentially even recommend people to go live at your development. El Portal is very much family driven and very passionate, and you will come to see that as the readings. You're going to go to a couple of readings and a couple of meetings, but I'm very excited. I can't even begin to tell you. So don't do us wrong, and thank you all for being here this evening. With that said,
Courtney will be at every meeting too.
I wanted to be last speaking.
Oh.
Okay. So Courtney will be here at every meeting. Courtney will be here at every with his wife and with JR. No, seriously, all kidding aside, thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Many blessings to each and every single one of you. I thank the committee. You guys were fantastic, great questions. We can't let them go that easy, right? So Ben Fernandez, thank you. It's nice meeting you. I love that you have the female architect. That's sort of awesome. And with that said, may I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilperson Roman. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, our special planning and zoning committee meeting concludes at 9:09 p.m. Thank you and Godspeed.